What would Diana have made of the tension between the two brothers, and what would she have made of Harry's departure to the United States?
Well, I think what's been missing from my observations and the reading over the last few years is that there needed someone to sort of broker this setup, really. Because, you know, it doesn't quite make sense that as two young kids, they were sort of joined at the hip, really. And, you know, what's more important, of course, that their father, the Prince of Wales, you know, he saw them, certainly when the Queen, you know, said to him 4 or 5 years ago, once that the Duke of Edinburgh was sort of relieved of royal duties because of his state of health, you know, the Prince had the idea of his two young princes being part of this sort of pyramid to sort of move to take the royal family into the future. Sadly, it looks as though he's lost 1/3 of that star now. But Diana, I think, certainly would have understood where Harry was coming from in terms of, you know, wanted a change of life, but would have understood clearly, look, hang on a minute, let's just give this a bit of time, because their departure was really sudden from the royal family. I don't think Meghan gave it a real chance. You know, why did this happen? You know, clearly, like Diana, if there is a similarity, you know, she was incredibly popular. The royal family generally have a problem with junior members coming into the family that are more popular than themselves. So I think that was an issue. So I think Diana would have been a good go-between here to sort this out. Sadly, you know, that never happened.
Diana might have prevented Megxit.
Well, I think, OK, it would have been different from what we now see it as, but I do think Diana, having effectively been there herself, would have seen the value of actually giving this some time. I think their exit was rather premature. But who knows? Personally, I think, you know, we could see Harry and Meghan return in a new style, in a new format. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of conversation going on about this. But I think, you know, one has to be optimistic. But who knows what might happen? The jury's out on that.
Well, you know Charles very well, of course, because you were, responsible for the protection of his children. And I know you think Charles is actually a decent guy, perhaps misunderstood by the public and the press. And do you think he might welcome Harry and Meghan back to the fold when hopefully a long time from now we lose the Queen?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, everything's sort of hinging now on what Harry might be saying in this book that's yet to be released. But I mean, going back to the question there, Mark, the Prince of Wales, you know, was an incredibly generous man during my time working there. And, you know, very difficult for him as it was for Diana in the sort of breakup and collapse of their marriage. But to be fair to him, he acknowledged all the time when I was working that, you know, his two children enjoyed the company of their mother more so than him. And he never sort of, you know, wanted to change that, irrespective of there was a deal that they'd have the children every other week. But for most of the time, of course, Diana had the lion's share and more. But the Prince was, you know, a very generous man and a very humorous man and a very funny man. And I had the occasion to work with him on many, many occasions. And Diana was just the same. But there was one story I remember, I must tell you, which was so lovely, just to give you an idea of his sense of humour. I went with him one night to the Royal Opera House, and at the end of which he always used to go to the National Gallery privately to look there. And we remember arriving at the Sainsbury wing, and he with his black tie with a small entourage of men and myself, equally dressed in black tie. And there stood by the door is a commissioner. Well, these commissioners didn't have a sort of fitted jacket and suit, but there was this poor chap about 5'6", with a jacket and tie for a man, you know, 6 foot, whatever. So the tie was knotted halfway down his chest, in desperate need of a haircut. And a very nervous man, as the Prince arrived, he sort of came out and said, "Evening, sir." And the Prince said, "Oh," he said, "how long have you been here?" He said, 7.5 years, sir. He said, "It's an awful long time to wait for me."
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
But, you know, that was the start. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe a chip off the old block in terms of his father's wicked sense of humour.
Well, exactly. I mean, the Duke of Edinburgh, as you know, was a doyen of sort of quick jokes and cracks, which I think that enhances, I think, the royal family. I think we need that.